Well, this eerie Lake Huron discovery may be that it possibly contains the remnants of an entire civilization. Whoa, wait, sounds like Atlantis, right? Well, not exactly. But if there really had been an ancient underwater civilization here, it must have been a pretty advanced one. Around 10,000 years ago, two sharp glassy flakes broke off a stone tool and landed on the ground unnoticed. They stayed buried there for thousands of years, until 2013. Then scientists pulled up a small chunk of mud, about the size of a milk carton, from the bottom of Lake Huron, 100 feet underwater. Inside the mud, they found those same two flakes made of obsidian, a shiny black volcanic glass that forms when lava cools quickly. After careful testing, they realized these flakes came from Central Oregon, which is quite a distance, about 2,500 miles away. They found this prehistoric Great Lakes site on the Alpena Amberley Ridge, an underwater landform that once connected what's now Michigan and Ontario. Back then, it was dry land. Early humans used it to build traps for animals like caribou as the Ice Age faded and the Great Lakes began to form. Now, obsidian was the high-tech material of ancient times. It's super sharp and perfect for making tools. If you study the flakes carefully, it's obvious that humans made them. You can see where they struck them and the feathered edges that come from being carefully chipped. That means people were not only crafting tools here, but they also had access to obsidian that came from incredibly far away. It was likely possible through a huge trade network that spanned across the continent. For over 100 years, people have guessed that ancient societies might have existed beneath the Great Lakes, but no one had proof. That's why work on this submerged archaeological site is so important. A team of researchers has been trying to learn more about the 10,000-year-old ruins and the civilization that left them behind for over a decade now. Lake Huron's icy water acted like a time capsule that helped preserve things for thousands of years. So far, researchers have found not only unique stone tools, but also ancient trees with roots still intact and underwater peat bogs that preserved seeds and leaves. It was like an Ice Age version of Pompeii, a scene frozen in time. These discoveries are also helping scientists create new technologies and ways to do underwater archaeology. They've engaged sonars, underwater robots, and divers so far. Now, it's pretty cool that the tools they found on the Alpena Amberley Ridge were way smaller than other tools from the same era found nearby. That might mean a different group of people lived here, and they had their own unique way of life. Even the peat bogs they found, which are about 9,500 years old, hold secrets. They're full of pine needles, seeds, and leaves that could reveal what the environment was like back then. Usually, stuff like this breaks down quickly on land, but the cold freshwater preserved it. The Michigan team is working with scientists in Cambridge, England, to extract DNA from the remains. If it works, it could finally confirm what animals lived there, and maybe even more. There are still years of discovery on this prehistoric Great Lakes site ahead. Another famous submerged archaeological site is the lost city of Pavlo-Patry. Archaeologists think it is the oldest sunken city in the world they've found and made official so far. Pavlo-Patry is around 5,000 years old. That means it existed even before the legendary Greek heroes in Homer's stories. Scientists first spotted it way back in 1904, and then mostly forgot about it until 1967, when Nicholas Fleming rediscovered it. He described it as a Bronze Age city now lying under about 10 to 13 feet of water. A year later, he returned with a team of scientists to study the ruins. Over 6 weeks, using just hand tapes and a basic grid, they managed to map out the city. They found that it covered almost 1,000 feet by 500 feet and had at least 15 buildings, courtyards, 5 streets, 2 tombs, and around 37 small stone graves. They also found signs that the ruins continued onto the nearby island of Pavlo-Patry itself. They dug up some amazing pottery, obsidian, and chert blades, and even a tiny bronze figurine that may date all the way back to 2800 BCE. Most of the buildings, though, came from the period between 1650 and 1180 BCE. Then scientists left the site alone again until 2009, when a super team of researchers launched a new 5-year project to really dive deep into the history of Pavlo-Petri. This time, they had digital mapping tools and better diving equipment, so they could explore and even excavate underwater. They found another 97,000 square feet of buildings, including a large hall and hidden streets. Plus, they dug up even more pottery that showed people had been living in the city from about 3000 BCE to 1100 BCE, and that the city once had a population of 500 to 2,000 people. No one knows for sure how the city ended up underwater, but many scientists think it was because of an earthquake, maybe around 1000 BCE, or even as late as 375 CE. Because it's the oldest underwater city ever found, some people even believe Pavlo-Petri might have inspired the legend of Atlantis. Another contestant for the Atlantis title lies near Japan. Back in 1986, a local diver was exploring the waters near the Ryukyu Islands when he found a giant structure made of perfectly shaped steps and sharp edges. It was 82 feet underwater. Today, the Yonaguni Monument is one of the most mysterious underwater sites on the planet. The structure is nearly half a football field in size. It looks like a massive stone pyramid with layers of platforms and steps stacked one on top of another. No one really knows where it came from or who built it. Some experts think the monument might be more than 10,000 years old, which would make it older than the Egyptian pyramids. One theory is that it could be the last remains of a lost civilization called Mu, a mythical Pacific society kind of like Atlantis. Others believe an ancient culture that lived in Japan as early as 12,000 BCE might have built it. But many scientists and geologists are skeptical about this possible underwater ancient civilization, even though Yonaguni has narrow passageways, arched openings, and right angles that almost look like city blocks. They say that the site looks a lot like natural rock formations, like the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, for example. The whole monument is still connected to a bigger chunk of bedrock, which means it wasn't built piece by piece. And the way the layers of rock are stacked probably has more to do with earthquakes and tectonic movement. It's located in the very active Pacific Ring of Fire. One marine geologist kept going back down there, and every time he found something new. He says he spotted tool marks in the rock, symbols carved into stone faces, and even rock formations shaped like animals. He believes these carvings point to a culture that came from mainland Asia. He said he had identified 10 different structures off Yonaguni, including a ruined castle, a triumphal arch, 5 temples, and even a huge museum. These buildings seem to be connected by roads and channels, and some parts are surrounded by what could be giant stone walls. The explorer believes the city is at least 5,000 years old, based on stalactites found in underwater caves nearby, which would have only formed after the caves flooded. His supporters say they have never seen an earthquake create shapes like this, above or below water. But skeptics blame it all on erosion and insist that whirling underwater currents and sea creatures left holes in the rock. Now, if you want to form your own opinion about it, the spot is open for visitors, and it's definitely a super fun diving experience. The lost city of Atlantis may have actually been found. No, really. 2 researchers were working in the waters off the coast of Cuba when they discovered the ruins of what looked like an ancient submerged city. That happened about 20 years ago, and yet no one really talks about it today. It's like the authorities just took the research, locked it away in some top-secret room, and decided no one else should know about it. But why? Well, I'm going to tell you. Back in 2001, Paulina Zalitsky, a marine engineer, and her husband, Paul Weinswig, were hired to explore the waters off Cuba's western coast. They had 2 main objectives: to search for old shipwrecks, possibly hiding treasures like gold and jewels, and to locate valuable oil and natural gas deposits deep underwater. They were using a sonar. Basically, this equipment is like a sound-based radar. It sends out sound waves underwater, and when those waves hit something, like a sunken ship, they bounce back. The system can figure out where and how far the object is just by listening to the echo. So the couple was scanning the seafloor with this equipment more than 2,000 feet below the surface. And then, out of nowhere, they found something way more interesting than gold or oil. They found stones. Not just any stones. I'm talking huge, perfectly arranged stones. Kind of like a mini version of the pyramid at Chichen Itza. Or even better, like a bunch of tiny submerged Chichen Itzas. Yep, they saw that. Or at least, they think they did. The thing is, sonar doesn't work like a camera. It definitely doesn't record video or take actual pictures underwater. What it does do is create images using sound. And those images are usually just outlines or shapes, kind of like a blurry black and white sketch. It shows you where things are, but not exactly what they look like. And that's exactly what happened back then. The equipment started producing images of these perfectly organized stone structures. And it really looked like some kind of urban development. I mean, the site was just too organized, too symmetrical to be just random rocks. But it sounded too good to be true. I mean, this discovery could totally change everything we know about ancient civilizations on the American continent. So the scientists decided it would be too irresponsible to announce anything without finding more evidence first. And that's why they decided to go back to that same spot. This time, they sent down an underwater remotely operated vehicle to actually see what was going on beneath the sea. See? This robot was basically an underwater cameraman. And yep, it confirmed it. There was definitely something strange down there. It looked like an ancient city made of huge, smooth blocks of granite. These rocks were about 8 feet by 10 feet. Some were in pyramid shapes, others were circular. Some seemed to be deliberately cut and then stacked on top of each other, while others appeared isolated from the rest. Together, they looked like they were forming corridors and outlines of rooms. It was like finding large buildings in the middle of an underwater desert. These images were enough for Zalitsky to seal the deal. Back then, she confirmed that this amazing structure, her words, could have been a large urban center. Again, her words. Then the couple started to speculate. They said that these structures were probably built more than 6,000 years ago, which would make them older than the Great Pyramids of Egypt. It's even older than the famous Maya, the civilization that used to live in the Americas and is known for their ancient and advanced temples. The research also suggested that these structures might belong to a civilization that lived on the American continent thousands of years ago, and that we didn't even know about. This supposed civilization once thrived on a 100-mile land bridge connecting Cuba to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. But then, something catastrophic happened. According to their theory, the Earth's faults shifted beneath the surface, leading to a massive earthquake. Then, in the blink of an eye, the entire bridge was destroyed. The land was swallowed up by the sea and ended up at the bottom of the ocean, and this civilization disappeared. Of course, all the connections to the famous Atlantis myth got the media totally hooked on the story. News websites ran headlines like "Lost City of the Caribbean Found" and "Atlantis Found in Cuba." So, could that really be Atlantis? I mean, did they finally find the remains of this supposedly super advanced and lost civilization? Well, it's hard to say. From the start, part of the scientific community wasn't buying into the story too much. First, there's the issue of the date. Saying that this civilization existed at this spot at least 6,000 years ago just wasn't very credible. Then, some European archaeologists argued that the stones they found using sonar might just be natural limestone, not perfectly sculpted granite. And third, it was too deep. Even with the whole theory of earth faults opening up and swallowing everything, it's still hard to explain how an entire city ended up so deep in the ocean. For comparison, there is Heraklion, a real ancient Egyptian port city that got submerged. Today, it is only about 19 feet underwater. But this so-called Atlantis city is at depths between 2,000 and 2,460 feet. See how that's totally different, right? People think it would have taken around 50,000 years for such stone structures to sink to the depth where they are said to be found. And according to experts, none of the known civilizations from that long ago had the ability to build such structures. But for Zalitsky, yes, it was possible. She still believed in the fault theory to explain how this land ended up at the bottom of the ocean so fast. Big movements of the Earth's tectonic plates are usually followed by things like volcanoes and earthquakes. So, according to her, it's a powerful event, and the island sinking could have happened really quickly. This earthquake theory could also explain why some of the megaliths on the seafloor look organized while others don't. But to really prove any of this, they needed a specially designed robot to go down there again and take samples of the rocks and sediment. That way, they could figure out how old the rocks were and maybe even find signs of human life, like carvings, sculptures, or artifacts. The problem is, drilling into those structures isn't easy. They look like granite, and drilling granite that deep underwater is seriously tough. And more than anything, they needed money to do it, a lot of it. So maybe they just never got the funding. Because even with all that initial hype, no further explorations or studies were ever reported. And that lack of follow-up sparked a lot of speculation. Some people even wondered if the story got shut down on purpose, like maybe the authorities wanted to keep something top secret. As if this underwater city was built by some kind of higher extraterrestrial being, and they just don't want us to find out. But truth be told, the strongest argument for saying, yeah, that is definitely a lost city, is that nature supposedly couldn't have built something so symmetrical. Geologists did try to find natural explanations, or at least similar examples from other parts of the world, but they came up short. Still, just because we haven't found a clear natural explanation doesn't mean there isn't one. Nature can create some pretty wild and unexpected stuff, so honestly, that whole too perfect to be natural angle is kind of a weak argument. What most likely happened is that experts just weren't convinced it was actually a sunken city, and that's probably why no one followed up on their work. Over time, the buzz faded, the story disappeared, and the site slipped back into silence. And without more data, the true nature of those underwater formations off Cuba's coast is still a mystery.
Ever since Plato wrote about the allegory of Atlantis, humanity has been fascinated with the possibility of the discovery of a thriving underwater civilization. Fancy joining me on a trip to a few historic underwater sites? Let's see what we can find out about ancient civilizations. The first one on our list is what is being called the underwater Stonehenge. Scientists have recently discovered a mysterious pile of cairns that stretch for miles under the shimmering waters of Lake Constance at the borders of Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. Archaeologists began to explore the site back in 2015, and they haven't been able to understand yet what it was actually used for. What they do know is that there is a 12-mile line of 170 human-made stone cairns under Lake Constance. Scientists say this was most likely the result of a combined work of several villages. The cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose. The formations are huge. Some of them are several dozen feet wide. The most amazing discovery so far is that the site dates back to around 5,500 years ago. Now, what were we humans doing back then? We were living in the prime years of the so-called Stone Age. We were beginning to make artifacts from stone and use them to hunt and eat. Can you imagine what a knife and fork might have looked like back in those days? It's no coincidence that scientists call this site the underwater Stonehenge, though. Both sites are believed to have been built around the same period of time. You see, Stonehenge dates back to around 3100 BCE. Both sites carry the distinct characteristic of stone monuments built in a circle. Not to mention the fact that scientists also haven't figured out why on earth our early ancestors would feel the need to build a monument such as Stonehenge. Well, the mystery of Lake Constance hasn't been solved yet. Who were the Neolithic people from this area? And for what purpose did they go through such an amount of work and effort to build this huge stone site? Next, we're taking you on a tour of the Ryukyu Islands just off the coast of Japan. you're diving deep down to an archaeological site. But I should warn you, the waters of the Pacific Ocean are far from smooth. It doesn't take long before you see a huge structure, thanks to the sunlight shining down on the seabed. At first, it looks like Machu Picchu's ruins located across the globe in Peru. As you approach the site, you slowly figure out its forms. A pyramid-shaped structure, arches, staircases. It's something that could have easily been a palace or a castle. Could this be a sign of human activity? What you've just seen is known today as the Yonaguni Monument. It also goes by the name of Japan's Atlantis. The entire monument is about the size of 5 soccer fields and the height of a 5-story building. Its most surprising feature is its expanse of terraces. Explorers and scientists believe that Yonaguni might be 10,000 years old. But whether it's a human-made structure or a natural formation is still under debate. For Japan's top marine geologist, Professor Masaki Kimura, Yonaguni is the heritage of a lost civilization. Kimura has dived to the bottom of the ocean to explore the ruins over 100 times over the past 10 years. According to him, there are clear signs of human activity down there. On the monument's surface, there is a triangle-shaped concave that is a historical symbol of water fountains in the region. There's also a giant turtle carved on the eastern side of the structure. And, according to Kimura, turtles have an important cultural meaning. Several pieces of stone tools have been recovered from the site. Their estimated age is around 10,000 years. However, not all scientists support this theory. For many, Yonaguni is the result of thousands of years of erosion. The fact that the monument is composed of one massive rock leads them to believe it's not human-made. The defined edges and flat surfaces resemble a natural formation in Northern Ireland, known as the Giant's Causeway. The basalt columns look like the ruins of a palace, but they're actually the result of volcanic activity in the region. Now, you're flying to the coast of Greece, 4 hours away from Athens. More specifically, you're in the Peloponnese Peninsula. You dust off an old snorkel and head for a free dive on a bright sunny day. Sometime into the dive, you start noticing patterns on a seabed. 13 feet below the surface, outlines of familiar objects start to appear, one by one. As you continue swimming, what looks like the outline of an entire city emerges in front of your eyes. Are you wondering how water could have taken the whole city? Rocks are perfectly aligned into what appears to be the foundation of a building. This is Pavlopetri, an ancient city you've probably heard about for the first time. It was discovered by Nicholas Fleming, a British oceanographer, when he was on vacation in Greece. He had heard rumors about Pavlopetri's existence and indeed found several artifacts on the seafloor. He went back to the area a year later with the team. They found a site filled with pots, storage vessels, and tools. A kernstone, for instance, is a tool used for grinding grains and turning them into flour. Multiple amphoras indicate that this settlement dates back to the Bronze Age, 5,500 years ago, when people started living in towns. The settlement is believed to have existed for over 2,400 years. Today, Pavlopetri is considered the oldest submerged town ever discovered, and what's impressive is that it wasn't a simple village. It was a vibrant port city with stone buildings, a marketplace, streets, and even squares. The next stop on our voyage is one of today's most famous underwater cities that has been turned into an archaeological park. The city of Port Royal in Jamaica exists only below the surface, but in 1692 it was one of the wealthiest cities in the Western Hemisphere. Port Royal was the center of the British Empire at the time and an important trade city that attracted people from all over the region. It was also home to real-life pirates of the Caribbean. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the people of Port Royal met a different fate than they had probably expected. The city woke up shaking. People were thrown out of their beds by the power of a massive earthquake, ranking 7.5 on a Richter scale. One survivor said he had seen Earth opening up and swallowing the whole town. What he said could be true, as the city was mainly built on sand. The ground swallowed buildings, roads, you name it. Geysers erupted, and finally, waves as big as 10-story buildings hit the city. About 33 acres of the city disappeared under the water. Amazingly, most of its 17th century remains are still in good condition under 40 feet of water. Archaeologists have found taverns, storage rooms, kitchens, and recreational buildings used for diverse purposes. You can also see a grand lion statue, a submerged bridge, and many picturesque arches. Of course, I saved the best for last: India. Just off its coast lies another sunken marvel. A site known as the Lost City of Khambhat is located in the Gulf with a similar name. It remained undiscovered until 2001, when the National Institute of Ocean Technology made a routine water assessment. With the help of sonar technology, which sends a wave sound to the bottom of the sea, they found something far beneath the surface. Images showed well-defined geometric shapes spread along a 5-mile stretch. The remains date to more than 9,500 years ago, meaning this civilization was lost at around the end of the Ice Age. Debris recovered from the site included construction material, pottery, beads, sculptures, and even bones. Scientists argue whether these artifacts are indeed from the site, but if they truly are, then the lost city of Khambhat might be the oldest civilization in the world. When you think of super pricey colors, gold, silver, and purple probably come to mind. But back in Pompeii, blue was the real showstopper. Known as Egyptian blue and later renamed Pompeian blue, this color was total luxury, glamorously coating walls in ancient Egypt as far back as 2500 BCE. And in Pompeii, the demand was so high that blue could cost more than even the ridiculously expensive purple. Finding a blue artifact from Pompeii is not easy, let alone a whole room. But in May 2024, archaeologists finally uncovered a completely blue room filled with murals, featuring female figures and symbols of the 4 seasons.
Oh wow, this is the blue room?
This gem was actually discovered ages ago during the Bourbon era, but it took until recently to finish a full excavation. The blue room isn't huge, about 86 square feet, but don't forget that vibrant blue is rare for Pompeian frescoes, usually saved for the fanciest spots. Experts think this room may have been a sanctuary for rituals or sacred stuff. Among the finds were bronze jugs, lamps, and 15 hefty amphorae. Amphorae were the Tupperware of ancient Rome, perfect for transporting liquids like olive oil, beverages, or garum, an infamous fermented fish sauce that Romans couldn't get enough of. Their tapered design meant they had to either stand on a rack or be buried in the ground, but that shape made shipping them really efficient. Also, the archaeologists found there were building materials for renovations and a ridiculous number of empty oyster shells. While you might think this room hosted some fancy shindigs with oysters and gallons of beverages in those amphoras, in reality, the shells weren't even leftovers from a posh dinner party. Instead, experts believe they were ground up to mix with plaster and mortar. The next find was unearthed around 2 decades ago, but the scientists only realized it in 2024. They had dug up the oldest cheese ever, clocking in at a whopping 3,600 years. The previous record holder was only 3,200 years old, found in an Egyptian tomb of some big shot named Thutmose. When they discovered that younger cheese, they found broken jars with this solid, whitish mass inside. It took some serious sleuthing to confirm it was cheese and not some ancient science experiment gone wrong. But let's go back to this 3,600-year-old cheese. It wasn't just sitting around like any old lump. It was actually a fashion statement. It was found in the tomb with the mummy of a young woman from northwestern China. She had the cheese hanging around her neck like some sort of dairy bling. Now let's talk taste. When experts were asked if they'd try the cheese, their answer was a swift no way. So basically, nobody's diving in to find out if it's pungent or not. But thanks to some fancy tech, they can analyze flavors. But even if they had dared to try, I bet it's nothing to write home about since it's as hard as rock now. Scientists figured out this cheese was likely kefir cheese, made from fermenting milk with kefir grains and had both goat and cow milk in it. Funny enough, the ladies whose tomb it was found in belonged to the Xiaohe people, who were probably lactose intolerant. But don't fret. Despite their limited plant options, they could still enjoy cheese since this kefir delicacy had surprisingly low lactose levels. Remember when everything felt brighter? The grass greener, people friendlier, and trees looking regal? Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating about the grass and the folks, but not the trees. In 2024, some ancient plant fossils from New Brunswick, Canada, are making waves. They uncovered Sanfordiaculus densifolia, a tree over 350 million years old. It sported a trunk, flaunting over 250 massive leaves, some up to 5 feet long. Instead of a classic crown, it had a bottle brush appearance on a slim trunk just 6.3 inches wide. It's like this tree went to the gym and skipped leg day for leaf gains. Typically, ancient trees are depicted as basic trunks, but this one is a real standout. It's somewhat similar to today's ferns and palms, though palms came later. These fossils are well preserved, buried in an ancient fault lake after an earthquake. While many might just think, cool tree, scientists are excited. This discovery helps them piece together our planet's evolution over millions of years. I get it, those blue rooms, ancient cheese, and trees aren't exactly inspiring much hope for the future. But I've got something that might just change the game. In 2024, scientists discovered a new theoretically habitable planet called Gliese 12b. It's a bit smaller than Earth, but bigger than Venus, and is orbiting a mellow red dwarf star about 40 light-years away in the Pisces constellation. This star is just 27% the size of our Sun, and 60% as hot, which puts Gliese 12b in the Goldilocks zone, where liquid water could actually exist, even with its speedy 12.8-day orbit. If it's got no atmosphere, the surface temperature is about 107 degrees Fahrenheit, so if you're used to Arizona summers, you'll be just fine. The only problem is that Gliese 12b is 12 parsecs away, and sec here doesn't mean a quick second. With our fastest spacecraft, a trip would take around 225,000 years. To put it in perspective, if we imagine a regular human lifespan of 100 years, which is already slightly exaggerated, it will take about 2,250 generations to get there. Still, it's nice to know we have Gliese 12b on deck in case things go south here on Earth. And even if we never actually get there, studying it with the James Webb Space Telescope might help unravel the mystery of why Earth stayed livable while Venus didn't. Archaeologists in Egypt have made an exciting discovery. They found the upper half of a huge statue of Ramses II. This 12.5-foot limestone piece was uncovered in Hermopolis, now Ashmunain, and it lines up perfectly with the lower part found in 1930. It took almost 100 years to finish the puzzle. The statue shows Ramses seated, wearing a crown and a headdress with a cobra, symbolizing his rule over both Upper and Lower Egypt. The back of the statue is covered in hieroglyphs, listing the king's numerous titles, highlighting his status as one of ancient Egypt's most powerful pharaohs. Combining the upper and lower pieces would create a statue nearly 23 feet tall. You probably know the Statue of Liberty was a French gift, but did you know that the famous Venetian lions were actually made in China and not Italy? Back in 1295, Marco Polo returned to Venice from a place called Cathay. We now know it as China. and shared some wild stories about everything from paper money to coal, and even Kublai Khan's swanky palace in Xanadu. While some people back then rolled their eyes at his tales, modern scholars are still raising their eyebrows a bit. Despite the skepticism, Polo is a key figure connecting Europe to ancient China. Now, some recent research suggests Venice and China were already well connected before Polo's trip. A prime example? The Bronze Lion of Venice in St. Mark's Square. Researchers from the University of Padua believe that it actually came from Chinese copper around the lower Yangtze River more than 3,000 years ago, all due to a chemical analysis they ran in 2024. The winged lion became Venice's symbol between 1261 and 1264, probably even before Polo's adventures. Experts point out its resemblance to the Tang Dynasty tomb guardians, which hint it might have had a makeover on its way to Venice. 2024 is not only the year of scientific discoveries, but also the treasure hunt year. A 2-foot-tall bronze statue of the Greek deity Diana, once a fixture on the Titanic's fireplace mantle, was discovered during a recent underwater expedition. Discovering this statue was like finding a needle in a haystack, except the haystack is 2.5 miles deep in the ocean. It's just one of the many art pieces maritime archaeologists have been looking for among the Titanic's wreckage. It was more than just a luxury liner. It was filled with art treasures, from a 1912 Renault to this stunning statue inspired by a piece at the Louvre.
Archaeologists recently found something fascinating from a forgotten Maya kingdom, a tomb hidden in a collapsing pyramid. Inside, there was a king buried for 1,700 years, a jade mask that looks almost human, but not quite. And all this thanks to the looters who missed it by just 6 feet. They stumbled upon it in 2022 in the dense jungles near the border of Guatemala, Mexico, and Belize. In Mayan times, this little place used to be called Xochitlam. It's a lost city, half swallowed by jungle. This place meant pretty much nothing compared to other big Mayan cities, like Tikal or Teotihuacan, or so we thought. The team found a tomb of a Mayan ruler. The artifacts, the names of kings, all this revealed that Xochitlam wasn't just some tiny village. It was a pretty important place for that culture. And what they found inside that tomb may rival the treasures of any Maya metropolis. The tomb's ceiling had collapsed long ago, but the offerings were still inside and remained intact even after centuries. They recovered over 16 spondylus shells. These things were used by the ancient elite for power and rituals. That meant that whoever the tomb was related to, it was someone wealthy, of high status, who got themselves a ceremonial burial. Archaeologists also found carved femur bones. They were etched with hieroglyphs and names. Maya literally wrote their history in human remains. Researchers want to dive super deep and get a DNA analysis on the bones. Maybe that will help uncover familial ties, origins, or health problems these people might have faced. And most important of all, the mosaic jade mask. It was pieced together from luminous green tiles into an expression that feels almost human, almost alive. A lot of people were joking that it's just like Jim Carrey's mask in the famous movie. But it wasn't a magical artifact. That was the face of a forgotten Maya king, staring out at us after 1,700 years of silence. His name was etched into the femur bones, Itzam Kokaj Balam. Historians think this might be the ruler who reigned around 350 BCE. Unfortunately, this period is super underdocumented. We barely know anything about those times, but it looks like he was pretty important to the locals. One of the bones even showed a carved figure holding a deity's severed head. The deity's head looks exactly like the jade mask. Perhaps this was supposed to be the king himself, defeating some mythological villain. Other inscriptions mention the king's father and grandfather. That links Xochitlam to the mighty Maya capitals we mentioned, Tikal and Teotihuacan. Tikal was once the beating heart of the Maya world. It was a fascinating megapolis. A city rose from the Guatemalan lowlands with towering step pyramids that scraped the sky. That place was home to tens of thousands of people. It was also a hub of art, astronomy, and culture. The rulers were worshipped almost as living deities. Their deeds were carved into stelae that still stand amid the howler monkeys. Teotihuacan was located even further north. Now that was a mystery of another kind. It wasn't really Mayan, but rather Central Mexican. But still, that was a true metropolis, one of the largest cities in the world during its time. It was most famous for its Avenue of the Dead and colossal structures like the Pyramid of the Sun. It was a rich cultural center that had a worldwide influence. For centuries, both Tikal and Teotihuacan seemed to have completely different cultures. Tikal was a flourishing city-state where people loved reading, astronomy, and beautiful architecture. Teotihuacan was a titanic militaristic superpower. Two big centers of Mexico, separated by 600 miles of jungle and mountains. Compared to these imperial capitals, Xochitlam was a whisper. But it looked like this Itzam guy from the tomb wasn't just a ruler of a random village. He seemed to have political ties in ancient Mesoamerica. The craziest part is that we almost lost this piece of history, all because of the looters. At some point in the past, grave robbers had tunneled dangerously close. They stopped digging just 6.5 feet away from the tomb. That's just like in that meme with the diamonds. Sometimes you stop digging right before you hit it big. But in our case, thank heavens they didn't get there first. That's how close we came to losing a piece of history. In an almost poetic irony, it was the looters' tunnels themselves that led Estrada Belli's team to the site. Archaeologists have been looking around and using the so-called LiDAR technology. That's basically laser beams shot from high above, which help them map the spot. It's like taking X-rays of the jungle floor. And that's when they found the little signs of intrusion. They quickly realized that if someone was digging here, they were probably looking for something important. Without the failing looters, they might have walked past a discovery. In any case, archaeologists want to keep searching. They might even find more chambers buried inside the abandoned pyramid. We just keep finding mysterious things related to the Maya. Recently, buried deep within the ruins of Tikal, archaeologists found a house, and in that house, a limestone altar. It was covered in vibrant murals of red, yellow, and black. What's weird is that this build wasn't made by Maya. It was unmistakably Teotihuacan in style. And just like the tomb from before, it was made about 1,700 years ago. The altar was discovered inside a Maya-era residence known as Group 6DX7. It stood 3.5 by 6 feet right in the center of the home. That was very typical for Teotihuacan traditions. It bore a mural of the storm god. That was also a central deity in the Teotihuacan pantheon. But this altar depicted no kings and no rulers. That's very weird. As we said, Maya worshipped and honored their dynasties and political power, putting them pretty much everywhere, like some merch. But instead, this altar worshipped the deities alone, and it did so in the heart of Maya's main capital, Tikal. When archaeologists dived deeper, they saw it as unmistakable proof that Teotihuacanos not only came to Tikal, they thrived there. This house wasn't some trade outpost. People actually lived in it. Teotihuacanos built homes, practiced their rituals, and left their deities behind in this city. And Maya seemed to be chill about that. Researchers think this was a home for some elite people from Teotihuacan, or maybe it belonged to Mayans who practiced Teotihuacano culture and deeply respected it. But it might be something darker than a simple, friendly multiculturalism. The two cities weren't in the best relationship. There was some tension, maybe even surveillance. The house and the altar were probably built around 300 to 400 BCE. That was a period when Tikal was rising in power. This might have caught the attention of the mighty empire to the north. It's almost as if Mayans poked the beast. By 400 to 450 BCE, that attention may have become something sinister. The altar could have actually been the symbol of domination. Had the Maya of Tikal truly welcomed their guests, or did they come here and bluntly started building foreign altars in sacred spaces? Did Teotihuacan use this as some kind of soft invasion? In that case, it would make sense for Mayans to destroy that place or vandalize it somehow. Mayans regularly buried their buildings and rebuilt on top of them. But for some reason, this altar remained untouched. Mayans found it and buried it with the surrounding buildings as they were. No vandalism, no destruction, no rebuilding even. Looks like they had some complicated feelings about Teotihuacans. It was a time when cultures clashed, fused, overlapped, and possibly spied on each other. Perhaps one day we'll learn more about what really happened among these ancient civilizations.
Meet Hula Male, also known as the City of Hope. This nickname makes total sense since this artificial island is part of the Maldives' big plan to avoid being completely submerged in the near future. Hula Male was created by placing sand from the seafloor onto a submerged coral platform, and it worked. This city sits about 6 feet above sea level, which means it's twice as high as the Maldives' capital, Male. While more and more people are moving there to live, the island was also designed to serve as a temporary evacuation site during dangerous storms and typhoons. Seychelles is another gem in the Indian Ocean that's at risk of disappearing. Unfortunately, coastal flooding is becoming a common issue there, especially during spring tides and heavy rainfall. The problem is that their main island, Mahé, hosts about 90% of the country's population. Along the coast, it's only about 6 feet above sea level. Fiji is the third tropical paradise on our list, and it's also a top pick for travelers. But this nation is in a tough spot, since it's located right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where huge storms can really turn things into chaos. Take Cyclone Winston. It hit Fiji back in 2016 and ended up costing them over $1 billion in damage. So one thing they're doing to protect themselves is planting mangroves along the coast and preserving the ones that already exist. These trees are awesome since they help reduce wind speed during cyclone emergencies and also combat erosion by trapping sediments. Egypt might be in trouble too. I mean, it's not like the whole country is going to be underwater and we'll only see the tips of the pyramids in a few years. But things could really change for them as coastal cities are facing a serious risk. Take Alexandria, for instance. 45% of its population already lives below sea level. If the city is flooded, not only will everyone have to move, but Egypt in general will suffer a major impact on its fish production. In Europe, one of the most at-risk populations is in the Netherlands, where about half the people live in areas below sea level. In the future, planning a romantic gesture with tulips for your girlfriend could become an impossible mission. The Netherlands is responsible for 2/3 of the world's tulip production. So if fields are taken over by saltwater, it's game over for the blooms. But the good news is that the Dutch have centuries of experience dealing with water, so knowing how to work with storm barriers and seawalls can prevent them from a doomsday scenario. The risks of rising sea levels probably aren't higher anywhere else than here in Tuvalu. This island chain, located halfway between Australia and Hawaii, could be the first state to become uninhabitable. Its stunning land is only about 9 feet above sea level. And just by looking at it on the map, you can see how narrow it is. In fact, the narrowest part in Fongafale is only about 65 feet wide. So even before higher tides become a real problem, the country's limited farmland could be flooded with saltwater. The next country on our list is the Philippines. This archipelago in Southeast Asia boasts some of the most stunning scenery, but it faces the risk of flooding for 2 reasons. First, due to rising sea levels, and second, because of crazy, unpredictable weather. Since 1990, events like cyclones, earthquakes, and tsunamis have cost the country over $20 billion. Have you ever heard of Vanuatu? This chain of islands, spread out between Australia and Fiji, could be flooded soon. Vanuatu was one of the first Pacific nations to relocate an entire community to a safer spot. Back in 2005, residents living in risky coastal areas of the northern island of Tegua moved to higher ground. Next up, the Marshall Islands, a country located in the Central Pacific. Studies show that 40% of the buildings in the capital city, Majuro, could end up underwater in the future. But this country isn't throwing in the towel just yet. They've got a game plan. They are fortifying the infrastructures of their low-lying airport, relocating key buildings to higher ground, and putting up seawalls on rural islands. Heading south, we've got Nauru. This is actually one of the smallest countries in the world, covering just 8.1 square miles. Today, it's home to 10,000 people, but it's on the brink of becoming uninhabitable. Water levels are rising about 3 times faster there than the global average. The Buada Lagoon sparks special concern since it's the only surface freshwater resource, and it's located only 16 feet above sea level. Our next stop in the Pacific Ocean is the Republic of Palau. Rising sea levels are no joke for them either, but protecting their crops, especially taro, is a priority at this moment. About halfway between Hawaii and New Zealand lies Samoa, and this country is dealing with a unique situation. Not only is the volume of water increasing there, but their land is also sinking. You see, a couple of strong earthquakes and tsunamis hit Samoa back in 2009. So as the crust bounces back to its original position, the overall land surface is actually going down. Because of this, their housing and main infrastructure could take a serious hit, especially since all their airports are along the coast. Let's head to Kiribati. This Pacific nation has a big problem with frequent flooding because most of its people and infrastructure are near the coast. Apart from the volcanic island of Banaba, none of Kiribati's land is more than 6.5 feet above the ocean. To tackle this situation and keep their population safe, they had this big idea of making a massive floating platform, kind of like the ones oil companies have. But the problem is that it would cost them a fortune, as the project is estimated to be around $2 billion. If visiting Vietnam is on your bucket list, you better hurry up. The top 10 things to do there mostly involve cruising to jaw-dropping spots like down to Ha Long Bay, also known as the Descending Dragons Bay. But by 2050, the surrounding land over there might be underwater. Another huge problem Vietnam is facing is that the main rice fields are getting salty. And if you're into Vietnamese food, you know how important rice is for them. Right now, they're especially concerned about the Mekong Delta region being vulnerable. After all, this is a highly fertile area responsible for most of Vietnam's agricultural output, with over 50% of it being, rice. This nation is really putting in the effort to adjust to this new reality. They're flushing the rice fields in the Mekong Delta with fresh water to get rid of the saltiness. Our next stop is in the Caribbean Sea. Grenada is an island country, but you may know it as the Island of Spice, since its tropical climate is just perfect for cultivating things like nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, and ginger. Unfortunately, Grenada and its incredible fertile soil also face an uncertain future of being submerged. Let's talk about the last country on our list, the Solomon Islands. 5 islands in this archipelago have already vanished beneath the waves, and 6 others are submerged by 20%. They include the Nusa Evili Island, which was once a hotspot to go to for a picnic in the early 2000s. Even though the situation is complicated, it's important to note that more than 300 of the islands there are inhabited. One thing about the Solomon Islands is that it seems like they're always in some kind of recovery mode, since the country often gets hit by tropical cyclones and flash floods. Their population is already working hard to save their homes from the rising seas by building stone walls along the coast, planting mangroves, and constructing houses in higher areas.
One more step in the wrong direction, and the crossbows will release their arrows. If you open the wrong door, you'll end up in a river of mercury. It's almost impossible to get out of this place, but it is even more difficult to get here. No, this is not a location from an adventure movie, but a treasure hunter. This is a real giant tomb filled with traps and streams of toxic mercury. And it's not somewhere deep in the Amazon jungle or an unknown island. This tomb is located in central China, near the city of Xi'an. And you know what the coolest thing is? This tomb was built more than 2,000 years ago. And even now, in the 21st century, we still don't know how to get there. But let's start from the beginning. Many of you have probably heard of terracotta statues. Thousands of clay sculptures of people. Those statues were first found in 1974, when a group of peasants were digging decks near Xi'an. They found a detailed human-sized figure, and that was 1 out of 1,000. Each figure was made as realistic as possible. Each of them was unique and had its distinctive details. More than 50 years have passed, and scientists are still digging up these sculptures. The number has already exceeded 8,000. But what are they doing there? What is their purpose? Terracotta sculptures are kinda guarding the tomb of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. He was such an influential man in China that he wasn't just buried in a tomb. His servants created a giant coffin complex the size of a small town. So, if thousands of clay guards symbolically protect this place, it's difficult to imagine what's in the center of this ancient, gigantic tomb. But first, let's find out who Qin Shi Huang was, and then move on to the dangerous traps. He was the first son of the ruler of the kingdom of Qin. It was one of the 6 kingdoms that existed on the territory of modern China. In 2059 BCE, when Qin Shi Huang was born, those 6 kingdoms were independent and separated from one another. Moreover, there was a strong conflict between them that lasted for more than 200 years. But Qin Shi Huang turned out to be the man who managed to conquer and unite all these kingdoms. He became more than just a king. He became the first emperor of China. But how did he complete a seemingly impossible task? Natural disasters, clever strategy, tactics, and skills helped him to conquer the 6 kingdoms. Scientists are still arguing about some of the details of how this happened. All that can be said is that Qin Shi Huang was a very wise and intelligent emperor. So it's not surprising that his burial turned out to be so huge. He was buried in the largest and most luxurious funeral complex in the history of China. The area the size of a small city contains many underground caves filled with things an emperor could need in the afterlife. In ancient China, as well as in ancient Egypt, people believed that when an emperor went to the other world, he could take with him those things that were buried with him. Unfortunately, sometimes it could be people, but Qin Shi Huang acted wisely and correctly. He decided to bury clay statues. But the coolest thing is that the architects and builders of this complex made it impregnable. The whole area holds many secrets, historical artifacts, and priceless objects. There's a beautiful place with the emperor's body in the center of this tomb. Imagine how many treasures you can find there, and all of them were meant to remain untouched and unseen by other people. And we probably won't be able to get to them, at least in the near future. Ancient Chinese historian Sima Qian wrote something about the tomb about 100 years after the emperor's burial. He said that this place had dangerous traps inside the tomb that would destroy anyone who dared to enter the tomb. The engineers installed crossbows with loaded arrows and also poured a huge amount of mercury, simulating the movement of rivers. Of course, that was 2,000 years ago, and crossbows probably don't work anymore. But what about mercury? This toxic metal has no expiration date. It's shiny and moves quickly in liquid form. It looks beautiful, but don't touch it. Even a small drop of mercury can cause damage to your body. Inhalation of its vapors or ingestion causes damage to nerves, the liver, kidneys, and many other symptoms. And that's just one drop. Imagine how dangerous rivers of this substance can be. Who knows how much mercury was loaded there by the tomb builders? But even if you dodge all the traps and don't end up in the poisonous river, mercury would still be able to harm you. Its vapors can pass through the cracks in the walls. This means that the entire tomb is probably soaked in this substance. And by the way, this is not just a guess. Scientists have measured the mercury level at the excavation site and found that it's much higher than normal. But why mercury? In ancient China, mercury was considered the elixir of youth. the source of immortality. According to the records, Qin Shi Huang often took pills with this element. Perhaps this was the reason that his life ended at the age of 49. In any case, people can damage ancient structures and artifacts during excavations. For example, archaeologists caused great damage to Tutankhamun's tomb during its exploration. You dig around, but then suddenly the entrance collapses and you destroy vases, scrolls, interior decorations, and other stuff. But even if you do everything carefully, the writing and drawings on the walls can be destroyed by sunlight or oxygen. Places where there has been no fresh air and ultraviolet radiation for thousands of years have their own chemical composition that can be damaged by contact with the outside world. In the 1970s, when archaeologists were excavating terracotta sculptures, the paint pigment fell off the statues because of contact with the sun and air. Fortunately, the archaeologists quickly adapted and created a technology that allowed them to get the statues out without damaging the paint. It was a long and careful process, but it was worth it, and here's why. According to ancient writings, the emperor created an underground kingdom with a beautiful palace in the center. He decorated the ceiling of this palace with expensive pearls. You know why? To simulate the stars in the night sky. And that's just the ceiling. It's difficult to imagine how the walls, floor, and tomb of the emperor are decorated. Besides, scientists expect to find many other statues that copy the emperor's servants. So, in simple terms, the tomb of Qin Shi Huang is a paradise for archaeologists and historians. But of course, it will take more than one generation before they extract all the treasures. Some experts predict that the excavation of the entire tomb could take centuries. But of course, new archaeological technologies can change everything. For example, non-invasive research methods mean you don't have to enter the tomb. You can see it through a special device. Another idea is the use of muons. Those are subatomic products that appear as a result of the collision of cosmic rays and atoms in the Earth's atmosphere. The point is that these muons can penetrate through solid objects, just like X-rays. Or how about nanotechnologies? Imagine millions of tiny digger robots climbing into a tomb and starting to scan the area. They transmit the data to a computer, and then scientists create a holographic model. It all sounds cool, but to be honest, the charm of archaeology is lost here. It's one thing when you carefully dig up some ancient artifact with your hands, see it with your own eyes, and scrupulously clean it from the ground. And it's completely different when you watch it on a computer screen. But in any case, technologies using muons or some kind of robots ensure people's safety. It's better if a computer falls into a trap than if it happens to an archaeologist. Thanks to sci-fi, we usually imagine extraterrestrials as smart beings with huge heads walking on two legs. But if life really exists out there, it could look like, well, anything. From an upside-down nightmare to a weird water creature looking like it was drawn by a toddler. But we don't need to travel across the universe, just back in time. Because a long time ago, Earth already had a creature like that. This is the story of the Tully Monster, one of the most bizarre creatures that scientists still can't explain. Around 310 million years ago, Earth was a drastically different place. Today, our continents are scattered like pieces of a broken plate. But back then, during the Carboniferous period, the planet had one supercontinent, Pangaea. That was more than 200 million years before a T-Rex was chasing down a Triceratops. Huge areas were covered in warm, shallow seas and swampy coastlines, with thicker air and higher oxygen levels. Oceans were filled with creatures that never made it past evolution's experimental phase, like this little guy. At one point, the area that's now Illinois was just shallow coastal waters and muddy shores. Sediment from rivers often buried marine creatures, and sometimes trapped them in iron-rich nodules before they could rot away. That's how soft-bodied animals, which usually don't leave fossils, were preserved in detail at a spot known as Mason Creek. Every single Tully Monster fossil we know of comes from this one place. It's entirely possible that these strange creatures were swimming all over the prehistoric world. But this could be the only graveyard that had the needed chemistry to preserve their bodies until we found them. But wait, what exactly is this thing? Well, first off, it was named after Francis Tully, the Illinois fossil collector who first found it and brought it to scientists. And second, it wasn't a monster, that's for sure. The animal was pretty small, usually only about 3 to 14 inches long. It had a soft, swimming torso shaped like a thick worm or a slug without any hard shells or bones. But its front end was both the coolest and the weirdest part. It had a long, flexible nozzle sticking out of its face, almost like a vacuum hose, except at the end of that hose was something resembling a claw. The snout itself wasn't rigid. It could extend and bend, similar to how an elephant uses its trunk, or how an octopus reaches with an arm. So instead of biting prey directly, it probably reached out with its face tentacle, grabbed a snack, and pulled it in. Its eyes were another weird, one-of-a-kind feature. They were positioned on a stiff horizontal bar extending from its head, with one eye at each end. This setup gave it a wild field of view, similar to how a periscope or side-mounted cameras can help you see more. Most animals fall into two groups, vertebrates and invertebrates. Vertebrates have a backbone like fish, dinosaurs, dogs, and us humans. Invertebrates don't, like worms, snails, and insects. The Tully Monster is one of the rare cases where scientists still argue what it was. When scientists look at the fossils, they see a pale stripe running down the middle of the body. One group says that's just a gut line, which would put the Tully Monster in the squishy invertebrate camp, meaning it was a weird swimming slug. But another group claims that it was a notochord, a kind of primitive stiffening rod that evolves into a spine. If they're right, that would make the creature a vertebrate, a distant cousin of fish and even us. Basically, all of this makes the Tully Monster a mix of a fish, a worm, and a crab, something never found since. Based on that soft, squishy body and little stabilizer fins, we know the Tully Monster wasn't exactly racing other fish. It wasn't fast like a shark. It was more of a slow-motion cruiser. It probably drifted through the water using that long snout to poke around in the mud for jellyfish, sea cucumbers, or maybe even some rotting stuff. Despite its scary-looking claw and eyes, we can't tell for sure if it was a predator. The Tully Monster was pretty well adjusted, so we don't know why it went away. If we look at the fossil record, this creature had disappeared way before the massive extinction events wiped out the dinosaurs or the earlier marine life. There wasn't an asteroid or a volcano involved. Perhaps it vanished because its home wasn't the same anymore. Remember, the Carboniferous period was a wet, swampy world. But as time went on, Earth's climate shifted. Tropical estuaries dried up and the chemistry of the water changed. This probably caused Tully's specific playground to disappear. As far as we know, the monster left no genetic heir. Usually, if an animal goes extinct, it leaves behind a cousin or a descendant that evolves into something else. Dinosaurs left us birds. Ancient fish left us, well, modern fish. But the Tully Monster remains unique. There's nothing alive today that looks remotely like it, and that's exactly why scientists are still pulling their hair out trying to classify it. We aren't confused because we're missing the pieces. In fact, we have over 2,000 fossils. We're confused because we have nothing to compare it to. And who knows, oceans are largely unexplored, so we might run into some new creature eventually that will add new pieces to the evolutionary puzzle. The Tully Monster might be the captain among the weird prehistoric swimmers, but it definitely wasn't alone. If we look back at the fossil record, especially during the Cambrian and Permian periods, we'll find a whole gallery of evolutionary experiments that look like they were designed by a committee of ETs. For example, we had hallucigenia, our upside-down creature. When scientists first found fossils of this tiny worm-like creature, they didn't know which side was up. On one side of its body, they saw long, sharp spines. On the other, they saw soft, stubby protrusions. They assumed the tough parts were legs and the soft protrusions were tentacles on the animal's back. Years later, better fossils revealed it was actually the other way around. The whole animal was put together upside down. The spines were like defensive spikes sticking up, and the softer parts were actually short legs meant to touch the ground. In other words, it wasn't walking on stilts at all. It had been upside down the whole time. Then there was Opabinia. This thing looks like a shrimp that got extremely confused. Most animals are happy with 2 eyes. Spiders have 8, but Opabinia decided it needed 5 for some reason. 5 mushroom-shaped eyes found out on its head, giving it a 360-degree view of the world. And if that wasn't enough, it had a long, flexible nozzle sticking out of its face, kind of like that of the Tully Monster. When this animal was first presented at a science conference in the 1970s, the room actually erupted in laughter because everyone thought it was a practical joke. Finally, there was a creature called Helicoprion. At first glance, it looks like a shark. But look at the mouth. Instead of a normal jaw that opens and closes like a hinge, it had something called a tooth whorl. As it grew new teeth, the old ones rotated inward, creating a literal spiral of teeth in its lower jaw. It looked like a circular saw blade embedded in its chin. Scientists spent decades arguing about where this saw blade actually went. Some put it on the nose, some on the tail, until they finally realized it was inside the mouth. All of these creatures, the Tully Monster, the upside-down worm, the 5-eyed shrimp, and the buzzsaw shark, remind us of one thing. We think we know what life looks like, but the history of our own planet proves that biology can be stranger than any sci-fi movie. We shouldn't assume evolution follows a straight line toward normal animals like us. Sometimes it takes a detour into the Twilight Zone. Archaeologists were looking for the long-lost tomb of Cleopatra when they found something that seemed too good to be real. Roughly 43 feet underground beneath a ruined Egyptian temple, there was a perfectly straight tunnel carved through solid sandstone. The tunnel is over 4,200 feet long and so precise that experts called it a geometric miracle. The tunnel sits beneath an ancient city west of Alexandria, near Egypt's Mediterranean coast. The team that found it carefully peeled back layers of stone and debris until they hit this passage, about 6.5 feet tall, cut cleanly into bedrock. There were no collapse marks or wandering curves, just precision. If you've ever tried to drill a straight hole into a wall at home and failed within seconds, imagine doing this underground for nearly a mile. Ancient builders had no GPS, no lasers, no modern surveying tools. Yet, this tunnel stays remarkably level over its entire length. That means they understood gradients, angles, and distance in a way that goes far beyond stack stones and hope. Engineers today rely on machines to maintain that kind of accuracy underground. These people relied on knowledge, repetition, and patience. Parts of the tunnel now sit underwater or collapsed, probably after several earthquakes that struck the region centuries ago. Some experts think the tunnel may have once connected the temple to water sources or ritual areas closer to the sea. Archaeologists noticed that the Egyptian tunnel is an exact replica of the Eupalinos tunnel in Greece. It's believed to be one of the most important engineering achievements of antiquity, which only makes the Egyptian tunnel more special. Underground passages in ancient Greece linked temples to sacred springs. Back in ancient times, people moved through space in specific ways, underground and above, to reenact myths and journeys of gods. A tunnel like this could represent a path to the underworld, rebirth, or divine transition. Nobody would invest this much effort in construction just for decoration. Plus, in earlier digs at the site, archaeologists pulled up all kinds of artifacts, including coins with the names and faces of Cleopatra VII and Alexander the Great. They also found figurines, statues of deities, a mummy with a gold tongue, and even an entire cemetery packed with Greco-Roman style mummies. The perfect geometric tunnel isn't an isolated flex. Not far away, underwater archaeologists off the coast of Alexandria uncovered something that sounds like it belongs in a royal travel documentary. A 2,000-year-old pleasure boat that once glided along the Nile. And this wasn't just another fishing vessel or cargo barge. It likely stretched over 115 feet long and 23 feet wide, and had a decorated cabin, plus around 20 rowers, which turned the river into a moving palace. This isn't speculation pulled out of thin air. An ancient Greek geographer named Strabo wrote about these exact boats around the 1st century BCE. He described lavish vessels used by royalty during festivals and ceremonial outings in Alexandria. For years, historians treated that as a poetic exaggeration. Then, this wreck surfaced, and suddenly, Strabo sounded less like a storyteller and more like a witness. Even ancient art backs it up. The Palestrina mosaic from Italy shows richly decorated boats floating down the Nile. They match both the texts and the physical evidence almost perfectly. Inside the wreck, archaeologists found something small but incredibly human. Graffiti scratched into the wood in Greek. Just writing left behind by someone who stood on that deck 2,000 years ago. Researchers haven't fully decoded the text yet, but its existence alone matters. It tells us this wasn't just a floating symbol of power. People lived on it. It was sort of like a modern luxurious yacht, and the Nile was like a highway. All types of vessels with passengers were moving back and forth, visiting friends, carrying their goods for trade, doing business, and, of course, going on pleasure cruises. The location of the pleasure boat makes the story even better. The boat sat near the temple of Isis on Antirodos, an island that once hosted royal and religious buildings before earthquakes and rising seas erased it from the surface. That temple collapsed around 50 CE, and researchers believe the boat may have sunk during the same disaster. Another recent find that has to do with life on the Nile is the lower part of the massive worship complex about 10 miles southwest of Cairo. It connects directly to an upper temple dedicated to Ra, the Egyptian deity of the sun. The newly excavated part is a 4,500-year-old valley temple. The upper temple sits on higher ground, and archaeologists excavated it years ago. The valley temple is closer to the Nile, and it's connected to the upper part by a causeway. A German Egyptologist actually started excavating part of the temple back in 1901, but the groundwater sat much higher then, and he had to stop. Now, the groundwater level is lower, and a modern team has managed to excavate about half of the Valley Temple since 2024. Once they got in, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a columned entrance portico. Then they found blocks carved with a calendar of religious events, almost like an ancient public schedule. The text includes feasts for Sokar, a falcon-headed deity linked to Memphis, which was a major capital during the Old Kingdom, plus the festival of Min, a fertility deity, and even the procession of Ra. The calendar blocks all showed up around the entrance portico area, which most definitely means that the outside facade of the temple displayed this long feast calendar publicly. That's why archaeologists think this might be one of the earliest examples of a true public calendar ever found. A literal event list for an entire community, built into the architecture. On top of that, the team found dozens of decorated blocks covered in inscriptions that named a pharaoh who ruled around 2420 to 2389 BCE and had the temple built. This temple shows how people moved through ancient Egypt. Because the upper temple handled the main worship, but the valley temple made the whole place accessible. It acted like the landing area for boats coming in, either directly from the Nile or more likely from one of its side channels. So instead of hiking across desert terrain, visitors could arrive by water, step onto the temple's landing stage, enter through the valley temple, then head up the causeway ramp toward the upper temple on the hill. After about a century of use, researchers found that the valley temple had been repurposed into a residential area. And the best part is, what they found from that era: 2 wooden pieces used for playing Senet, an ancient board game. Senet shows up at other Egyptian sites too, including King Tutankhamun's tomb, but nobody fully agrees on the rules today. Some discoveries in Egypt create new mysteries instead of solving the old ones. Earlier in 2025, archaeologists announced the discovery of the first pharaoh's burial found in or near the Valley of Kings since King Tut's tomb in 1922. The newly found tomb of Thutmose II flooded almost immediately after burial. Ancient officials rushed in, removed the mummy and most of the grave goods, and hid them somewhere else. The weirdest part is that an alabaster ointment jar inside the tomb links the burial directly to Hatshepsut, Thutmose II's wife and half-sister. The inscription basically says she made this monument for him, which proves she arranged his burial. But it still doesn't explain why she placed him here and later chose the Valley of the Kings for herself. Now, archaeologists are studying a huge mound of rubble near the tomb, about 75 feet tall, and suspect it was built to hide something important. If a second tomb sits underneath, it could be complete and undisturbed. So, the deeper the archaeologists dig, the more ancient Egypt stops feeling like a gone civilization and starts feeling like a paused one. Looks like it didn't just survive time, it outsmarted it. And we're only just beginning to catch up. There's something absolutely massive and deeply unsettling hiding right next to Stonehenge. More than a dozen giant pits carved into the ground. They're all spaced with eerie precision and form a perfect circle, more than a mile wide. For years, nobody could explain them. They were too big to be animal traps, too organized to be natural sinkholes, and way too deliberate to be random. And the biggest question was, who had the power, knowledge, and reason to reshape the land on this scale 4,000 years ago? So these pits surround a place called Durrington Walls, a huge Neolithic settlement just a short walk from Stonehenge. Archaeologists now say humans dug them around 2500 BCE, during the late Neolithic period, when people supposedly lived simple farming lives without metal tools, written language, or modern math. Each pit stretches about 30 feet across and plunges roughly 15 feet down, and together they form an almost flawless ring. To prove the pits weren't natural, scientists went full detective mode. They drilled soil cores and tested the dirt itself, including microscopic traces of ancient DNA and something called luminescence dating, which tells you when the soil last saw sunlight. Every test pointed to the same answer. Humans made these pits on purpose. Here's where it gets wild. The pits weren't dug randomly as people moved along. They were laid out as a single unified project. That means Neolithic builders had to visualize a massive circle, measure distances across open land, and coordinate teams over a huge area without any GPS, drones, or even aerial maps. All they had were people, ropes, wooden tools, and shared knowledge. So why would they invest so much effort and do this? Archaeologists think the pits formed part of a ritual landscape, not a practical one. Durrington Walls already looks like a place where people gathered for ceremonies, feasts, and seasonal events. The pit circle may have marked a sacred boundary. It could have separated ordinary land from a spiritually charged space. Some researchers think the pits symbolized a border between the world of the living and the underworld. The scale of the structure is pretty impressive. It may be one of the largest prehistoric monuments ever built in Britain, even bigger than Stonehenge itself when you look at the total area. And unlike Stonehenge's towering rocks, this monument stayed invisible for thousands of years, quietly hiding under the grass. Generations walked over it without knowing they were standing inside a gigantic ancient design. For a long time, we underestimated ancient people. We imagined them reacting to nature instead of shaping it. But discoveries like this keep proving that wrong. The builders of Durrington Walls didn't just live in the landscape, but engineered it. They thought in terms of geometry, symbolism, and long-term meaning. And this isn't the only case. All over the world, thanks to new technology, scientists keep finding proof that ancient humans worked on massive scales with shocking precision. In the Amazon rainforest, researchers found traces of 2,500-year-old cities hiding beneath the jungle canopy. Scientists spent more than 20 years exploring the area on foot before technology finally cracked the case. The LiDAR technology, which is like X-ray vision that surveys a landscape using lasers to digitally peel away the jungle, scanned a massive area of over 100 square miles. It helped to spot more than 6,000 rectangular earthen platforms, which are likely used as homes or public buildings. They also found agricultural terraces, drainage systems, and carefully shaped farmland. This wasn't a random settlement. It was well planned. At least 15 distinct settlements appeared, all connected by wide, straight roads that cut cleanly through the landscape. These roads didn't follow rivers or slopes as you'd expect. They crossed each other at perfect right angles, forming a grid. The researchers believe people from the Quilomope and Upanu cultures lived there between about 500 BCE and 300 to 600 CE. They farmed corn and sweet potatoes, reshaped the land, and built a system that lasted for centuries. Discoveries like this prove something huge. Far more people lived in the Amazon than scientists ever thought. Tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands. And they didn't just survive there. They engineered the landscape. Just like at Durrington Walls, the real story hid in plain sight until technology caught up. Then there's Peru, with one of archaeology's biggest headaches, the Nazca Lines. These gigantic designs of animals, plants, and geometric shapes stretch across the earth like an ancient message, so huge that only birds or satellites can see them properly. For decades, people have tried to figure out why the Nazca people made them, how they did it, and what those massive patterns mean. And until recently, the mystery stayed stubbornly unsolved. Walking the desert or flying over it, archaeologists would spot lines and figures and wonder if anything was missing. But the ones already known were just the tip of the iceberg. Traditional fieldwork, with people on the ground slowly mapping things out by hand, took forever. And even then, dozens of smaller designs were just too faint for the unassisted eye. So, instead of scanning the desert on foot, researchers taught artificial intelligence how to see patterns in aerial and drone imagery. They fed terabytes of pictures into trained models, and AI began flagging shapes, curves, and ancient outlines that had been hiding for centuries. In just about 6 months, it identified 303 previously unknown geoglyphs in the Nazca Desert. It almost doubled the number of figures we knew before and showed entire classes of designs. Some of these new shapes are tiny, just a few feet across, but they sit next to giant ones like the hummingbird or monkey. Thanks to all the new finds, scientists can finally start testing theories they had about the purpose of the lines. It looks like the lines weren't just decorations. Many may have been walkways or routes used for ceremonial movement. In case you're worried, AI isn't replacing archaeologists. They still check every promising lead on the ground and interpret everything the machines find. Back in Britain, the pit circle also connects to an even older structure, an early Neolithic site called Robin Hood's Ball. Because it stood so far from the famous stones, it felt like a side character. But it turns out Robin Hood's Ball is from around 3600 BCE, which makes it about 500 years older than Stonehenge itself. It's what archaeologists call a causewayed enclosure, which sounds fancy but really means a big circular earthwork made of ditches and banks. Instead of one clean trench, the ditches are broken into short segments with little gaps in between. And instead of keeping people out, it probably brought them together. Archaeologists think these enclosures worked as gathering places, spots for meetings, feasts, rituals, and social bonding among the first farming communities. Then came the twist no one expected. While preparing land at Lark Hill, a hillside northeast of Stonehenge, for new military housing, archaeologists found signs of another causewayed enclosure. This discovery flipped the map upside down. The landscape wasn't growing outward from Stonehenge, it was already alive long before the stones ever went up. As researchers dug deeper, they found hundreds of flint tools, beautifully made leaf-shaped arrowheads, chunks of human skull, and pieces of antler, likely used as digging tools. Then came the pottery. Different styles showed up in different places, some from the enclosure ditches, others from nearby pits. That matters because pottery styles often act like cultural fingerprints. The mix suggests something big. Different groups of people were visiting the same place and brought their own traditions, tools, and objects with them. All of this changes how we see Stonehenge. The stones didn't appear out of nowhere. They rose in a landscape already loaded with meaning, memory, and movement. Every new discovery like the ones near Stonehenge in the Amazon jungle and Peru forces archaeologists to rewrite textbooks and the whole world to rethink the idea of progress. It turns out that ancient people made up for the absence of steel and electricity with observation, creativity, and shared meaning. Tiny microbes, basically ancient germs, have been frozen in Arctic ice for tens of thousands of years, just chilling there, since woolly mammoths were still walking around. And now, scientists think these little guys might wake up again if Arctic summers keep getting longer and warmer. Yep, you heard right. Zombie microbes. Great. These microbes have been stuck in permafrost, which is soil and ice that stays frozen solid year-round. The top layer melts a bit in the summer, but the really old stuff, those Ice Age microbes, are buried way deeper. They only thaw if things get really warm for months, not just a hot day or two. To study these microbes, the team went down to the Permafrost Research Tunnel near Fairbanks in Alaska, a long underground hallway 50 feet below the surface, carved right into the ancient frozen ground. The tunnel stretches over 350 feet and lets scientists literally walk through thousands of years of frozen history. By the way, while checking out the walls, the researchers also spotted bones of mammoths and bison sticking out of the ice. One of the reasons why the researchers went to Alaska was to see how fast these ancient microbes could come back to life. Well, they were in for a surprise. These microbes don't need years, centuries, or magic spells to wake up. Just a couple of months of warm weather. Once they're awake, they start doing their microbe stuff, which includes pumping out greenhouse gases like CO2 and methane. And that's bad news, because those gases warm the planet even more. This melts more permafrost, which wakes up more microbes, which releases more gas. You get it. Basically, it's a nasty climate loop. Anyway, when scientists went down into the frozen tunnel to grab chunks of super old permafrost, the first thing they noticed was the awful smell. It wasn't just the stench of an old basement. It was something has been frozen for thousands of years and is finally waking up bad. Weirdly, microbiologists were happy. Such a smell is actually a good sign for them because it usually means tiny creatures, microbes, are still around. Back in the lab, the team soaked the frozen samples in the water that had a special kind of heavy hydrogen inside it. This helped them track what the microbes were doing later. Then they put the samples into fridges at 3 different temperatures: cold, kinda cold, and not too cold, to copy what future Arctic summers might feel like if the warming continues. For the first month, almost nothing happened. Even the warmer samples barely changed. Only a tiny number of microbes started waking up. Basically, a microscopic trickle of activity. But a few months later, things got more exciting. Thanks to the heavy water, scientists could watch how much of it the microbes used to build their cell membranes. It helped them figure out that the old microbes were making special fatty molecules that might help them stay alive in freezing conditions. By the 6-month mark, the samples that were stored at the warmer temperatures had transformed completely. They became more active and started forming little slime layers. The scientists could actually see these layers even without a microscope. The whole community of microbes wasn't super diverse, but those that were active behaved just like modern microbes that live in unfrozen soil today. In short, those ancient microbes were definitely alive and got pretty energetic once the temperatures were warm enough. This matters a lot for the Arctic and for the whole planet because these microbes survive by eating old organic material trapped in the permafrost. When they eat, they release greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane, and the Arctic is warming faster than any other part of Earth. It means that the deep frozen layers might stay warm long enough for huge numbers of ancient microbes to wake up and start pumping out gas. Right now, northern permafrost holds about twice as much carbon as the entire atmosphere. If a lot of that carbon gets released, it could speed up the warming of our planet. It can lead to dramatic consequences, setting off a whole chain of huge changes and affecting basically everything on Earth. Extreme weather will start happening more often. Stronger hurricanes, heavier rainstorms, longer heat waves, bigger wildfires. The oceans will rise too, which can flood coastlines and put towns and cities at risk. Animals, plants, and entire ecosystems can get thrown out of balance, with some species struggling to survive and food chains breaking down. People all over the world will have to deal with crop failures, water shortages, and damaged homes or infrastructure. Let's get back to our zombie microbes. The thing is, the study only looked at them in one place in Alaska, but there's a massive amount of permafrost all over the world, in Alaska, Canada, Siberia, and many other places. And microbes in different regions might behave differently as things warm up. Scientists still have tons of work to do to figure out what's coming next. I bet you're questioning yourself. Could ancient viruses infect us? Well, most of the ancient microbes frozen in permafrost are totally harmless. They're like old bacteria that only care about messing with other tiny organisms in the dirt. But scientists worry that a few of these frozen germs might be the kind that can infect people, animals, or plants. And if that happened, our bodies probably wouldn't recognize them at all, because they've been frozen since mammoths existed. Basically, there's no immune system cheat codes for us. The risks of this happening grow for a number of reasons. For one thing, the Arctic is warming almost 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. Longer summers plus hotter temperatures mean more permafrost melting. So, more ancient stuff is waking up. Plus, people might start digging more around there. Companies will mine more, drill for oil, and ships can travel new routes. All this activity tears open ground that used to stay frozen solid. This increases the chance that someone or something comes across some ancient germ that just woke up. What would actually happen then? We might run into different zoonotic diseases, basically germs that jump from animals to humans. This already happened once. Thawed reindeer carcasses released anthrax, a rare and serious illness which then infected people and animals. Luckily, we do know how to treat anthrax. But what if something even older wakes up? Besides, our immune system might have zero defense. If a virus hasn't been around for tens of thousands of years, humans today would be like, what is that thing? No antibodies, no memories of it, nothing. But the scariest part is that we don't know what's hiding down there. Scientists think permafrost might be storing trillions of frozen microbes, many of which we've never seen before. Some might be boring, and some might be super dangerous. So what if one such virus finally thawed out? The world would be dealing with a disaster no one has ever seen before. This wouldn't look like a normal outbreak. It would feel more like something out of a horror movie. First, the virus would be totally new and our immune systems definitely wouldn't recognize it. That means the virus would spread crazy fast, jumping from person to person. No one would know what to expect. It could cause weird illnesses, sudden fevers, or even something way more dangerous. Stuff as scary as the diseases people faced in old times. Scientists digging in permafrost already look for traces of those ancient diseases, so it's not impossible. Once it escapes, the virus wouldn't stay local for long. With people traveling everywhere and companies rushing into the warming Arctic for mining and shipping, the infection could go from one small Arctic village to major cities all over the world within days. Hospitals would fill up instantly and doctors and nurses would run out of supplies. Businesses would shut down. Food supplies could crash if the virus hit farm animals or crops. Shipping and travel could freeze completely. Fear and panic would spread around the globe almost as fast as the virus itself. There'd be no vaccine and no cure, because no one has ever seen this virus before. Scientists would have to start from zero. In short, a zombie virus outbreak would be totally unpredictable, and the modern world is certainly not ready for it. It started as a routine cleaning to scoop some mud off the coast of Indonesia, but turned into a discovery of remnants of a lost, submerged, Ice Age landmass. Archaeologists found more than 6,000 fossil fragments, and among them, 140,000-year-old Homo erectus remains. This find made scientists rethink how early humans lived, moved, and interacted in Southeast Asia. For years, they thought that Homo erectus on Java Island lived in isolation, separated from the rest of the world. But these dredged fossils blew that story apart. It turns out Java wasn't an island at all back then, but part of a landmass called Sundaland. So, Southeast Asia stretched out like someone had drained the ocean, connecting Indonesia, Malaysia, Borneo, Thailand, and Vietnam into one gigantic landscape. Today's islands of Java, Sumatra, Borneo, and Bali were connected by river systems that probably looked like the Amazon, by forests where giant animals roamed, and by coastal plains that would later sink beneath the ocean when temperatures went up. And Homo erectus were not stuck. They were thriving in what honestly sounds like prehistoric bliss. Yep, it was nothing like we normally imagine Ice Age, a sort of frozen wasteland. Sea levels dropped more than 400 feet because so much water froze into glaciers. When all that water got locked up in ice, whole sections of the ocean floor popped out of the water like stepping stones. Suddenly, early humans didn't need boats. They could literally walk from what's now mainland Southeast Asia all the way to places that are islands today. They could do it while exploring and chasing herds across open land. It was sort of like a giant prehistoric highway system. That giant highway matters because it completely rewrites how early humans moved around. Instead of being trapped, Homo erectus had a whole continent to roam. They followed rivers, crossed valleys, and adapted to different environments the same way you learn shortcuts to the office or find new routes to your favorite coffee shop. And because everything was connected, animals wandered freely too. Tigers, elephants, supersized cows, and turtles the size of small cars. People followed these big animals. This among the fossils pulled from the Madura Strait, such as cut-marked turtle shells and cracked open bovid bones. When you see precise cut marks on bone, it means someone was deliberately carving meat off the bone with tools they made themselves. And cracked bones mean they were taking out marrow, which was like prehistoric energy gel, rich, fatty, and perfect when you need calories to survive. That's a level of planning and skill scientists didn't expect from Homo erectus. It pushes Homo erectus closer to species like early Homo sapiens and Denisovans when it comes to behavior. It means they weren't just surviving on scraps, they were actively pursuing animals, processing, and maybe even sharing food the same way later humans did. So if you imagine them as slow, hunched cavemen, forget that. These people were sharp. The techniques they used to process food look eerily similar to those used by other hominins. Not just Homo erectus, we're talking Homo floresiensis, Denisovans, and early Homo sapiens. That opens the door to the possibility that these groups didn't just exist side by side. They might have interacted. Maybe they traded ideas and copied techniques. Or maybe they even interbred or shared territories. All this makes Southeast Asia look not like a series of isolated islands, but like a buzzing human ecosystem, a place where different human species crossed paths. And here's the heartbreaking part. Everything we know about this place, everything humans built, lost, and discovered there, is all underwater now. When the Ice Age ended, glaciers melted like forgotten ice cream cones on a hot sidewalk. Sea levels rose. Slowly, then quickly, rivers flooded, coastlines vanished, entire human landscapes disappeared beneath the waves. Sundaland drowned over thousands of years, and the people who lived there either adapted or moved to higher ground. Archaeologists now try to interpret what these people did, how they lived, and how many human species walked that land. Every time they pull together bone or artifact from the seabed, we get one step closer to rewriting everything we thought we knew about early human migration. And the new discovery could mean that Southeast Asia may have been just as important to human evolution as Africa, the Middle East, or Europe. Looks like Sundaland wasn't a side quest, but a real mixing zone, a place where humanity experimented, adapted, learned, and evolved. Unexpected finds like this one in Indonesia keep popping up around the world and surprising scientists. Farmers in China were hoping to scoop up bat droppings for natural fertilizers inside a narrow limestone cave. But instead, they spotted pieces of fossilized bone that looked suspiciously like parts of a human skull. This skull turned out to be ridiculously old, around 300,000 years old. Scientists eventually named the fossil Maba-1. The discovery happened way back in 1958, but ever since then, nobody could agree on which ancient human species this skull belonged to. During the late Middle Pleistocene, the world was basically a crowded highway of different ancient human species wandering around. Or just maybe, Maba-1 came from a species we've never met before. The big issue was that researchers only found part of the skull, no jaw, no other bones. So it was like trying to solve a giant puzzle with half the pieces missing. For ages, scientists guessed it might be Neanderthal. But now they've used micro-CT scanning, which is like an X-ray superpower that lets you peek inside fossils without breaking them. That's when they noticed weird tube-like structures connecting parts of the brain case, something Neanderthals basically never had. The inside shape of the skull looked way more like Homo erectus, a much older human species. But even that wasn't a perfect match. The skull's size and shape were closer to modern humans and Neanderthals, and it showed traits Homo erectus usually didn't have. For example, it had a shorter forehead area and a thickened bregma, the meeting point between two skull bones. Maba-1 also had a strange dent on the forehead, almost like a bruise frozen in time. Whatever caused it, maybe a fall, maybe anemia, it happened while the person was alive. But there was no sign of infection, so that individual probably healed and kept living after whatever hit them. So Maba-1 doesn't match any known species perfectly, but it shares features with several and has a similar mystery fossil vibe as others found across Africa. In 1976, a famous paleontologist and her team found another human-like skull in Tanzania. That skull had features that looked surprisingly similar to Homo sapiens, even though it was unbelievably old. Scientists think it may be one of the earliest examples of our species ever discovered. That means this skull could help solve one of science's biggest questions. When exactly did Homo sapiens first show up? The sediment layer where that skull was found goes all the way back to the Middle Pleistocene. That's way earlier than what old textbooks used to claim about when modern humans appeared. And then there's the skull that turned up in Zambia's Broken Hill ore mine. Miners literally stumbled on it, plus a few other bones, completely by accident. Scientists started calling it Rhodesian Man, and at first, everyone thought it might be the big missing link between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. But with newer research tools and better dating methods, they discovered it's around 299,000 years old and probably belonged to someone from the species Homo heidelbergensis. Every new fossil acts like a missing puzzle piece on the giant chaotic story of human evolution. Each one helps scientists connect species that once seemed unrelated, redraw family trees, and rewrite chapters of our past we didn't even know were wrong. Darkness comes right at noon. What is it? The end of the world? Are you getting blind? Is some kind of giant asteroid moving toward Earth? Oh, don't worry. It's just an eclipse. A cosmic event on a planetary scale that isn't scary at all. It's a moment when the moon passes in front of the sun and the planet plunges into darkness for a short time. When this happens, we're not surprised, as scientists usually report on an eclipse several months in advance. With the help of astronomical calculations and mathematical models, they predict the positions of the sun and moon for many, many years ahead. But what happened to people in the past? 100? 500? 1,000 years ago? A farmer goes to work in the field and suddenly the whole area is plunged into darkness. He knows it's morning, but what's happening? Or sailors who travel the seas and oceans and suddenly notice that the horizon and the sky are getting too dark, as if someone had switched off the light. Imagine the primal horror they felt. But in reality, people didn't panic. Even before the invention of computers, giant telescopes, and satellites, people could predict the time of an eclipse in advance. How did they do it? People in the past were much smarter than some of us think. Let's see how they performed astronomical calculations using the example of the Maya civilization and their famous eclipse calendar. So in case you didn't know, the Maya are an indigenous people of Mesoamerica who lived in southern Mexico, northern Belize, and Guatemala. By the way, the word lived is not very fitting. These people are still alive. At the beginning of the 21st century, more than 5 million people spoke 30 Maya languages. Before the Spanish conquest, this civilization was one of the most advanced and complex in the world. The first Maya people appeared here as early as 1500 BCE. By 200 CE, the Maya had already built entire cities with pyramids, courtyards, temples, and infrastructure. The Maya were known for their calendars and astronomical predictions. Many of you have probably heard of the Mayan calendar, whose chronology ended in 2012, so a lot of people thought the apocalypse would start that year. Fortunately, nothing happened. Another Maya invention was the eclipse calendar, which helped these people predict eclipses. For a long time, scientists couldn't figure out how this calendar worked, but now they finally have the answer. It all began with the Dresden Codex, a book from the 11th or 12th century. It has 78 pages made of bark paper and contains knowledge about astronomy, astrology, the seasons, and medicine. It was one of the few books that remained intact after the Spanish conquest of Maya territory. The dates of eclipses used to be very important to people. But why? Did they want to take a day off on that day and have parties? Something like that. Only those parties were scary, dark, ancient rituals. And there was definitely nothing funny about them. The Maya assumed that the moment when the light of the sun was obscured by the moon was some kind of sign from the mythological creatures they worshipped. It was dark in the middle of the day, and the Maya used this time for their sinister rituals. They hoped these actions would please the deities, bringing good harvests, protection from enemies, renewal of nature, or other blessings. We won't go into details. The only important thing is that the Maya wanted to know the dates of the eclipses to prepare for the rituals in advance. For this purpose, they created the eclipse calendar. One of the tables in the Dresden Codex shows 405 lunar months. One such month equals one full orbit of the moon around the Earth, which is about 29 days. The Maya priests used these calculations to predict eclipses for about 700 years ahead. With the help of this calendar, they knew the day of the eclipse. However, modern scientists could not understand how the Maya used this thing. But recently, they found the answer. So, the Maya observed the moon and the sun every day. By observing how the moon moves across the sky, they figured out that it takes about 29 days to pass from one new moon to the next. Then, the Maya noticed that sometimes the moon blocked the sun, and those eclipses didn't occur at random, but in certain cycles. They created a large calendar with numbered lunar months, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and so on up to 405 months. During some months, the moon completely blocked the sun, and during others, only partially. The Maya noted exactly which days these eclipses happened. They recorded the moon's position for 405 months. With these notes, they could predict where the moon would be for the next 405 months, and then the next, repeating for hundreds of years. In simple words, they started the calendar anew after passing this deadline. At least, that's what modern scientists thought, but it was a mistake. The moon doesn't orbit the Earth in exactly the same time every month. Some months it takes a little longer, some months a little shorter, just a few hours more or less than the last orbit. Of course, such changes in the schedule were insignificant, but there were many of them, and this made the calendar incorrect. Imagine that you're only a minute late for a meeting with your friends. It's okay. But if you've been running late for 3 months, then you've already got about a 90-minute delay. On the Mayan calendar, which showed 405 months, there were many more of those extra hours. If the Maya always used the last number from one table to start the next one, their eclipse predictions would slowly become wrong. The mistakes would grow bigger each time they reset the table. Instead, the Maya probably began a new table at the 358th month of the old one. In this case, their predictions for when the sun and moon line up would only be about 2 hours and 20 minutes too early, which is very accurate for that time. If we compare the ancient table with what we know today about eclipse cycles, we'll find that this method would let the Maya correctly predict every solar eclipse seen in their lands between 350 and 1150 CE. These small corrections kept the table working well for a very long time. Scientists are sure that with these updates, the table would stay accurate for centuries, with mistakes of less than 51 minutes over 134 years. This shows how advanced Maya math was. It also reveals how deeply the Maya connected their lives and beliefs to the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. We do a similar thing when we have a leap year. February usually has 28 days, but every 4 years it gets an extra day, making 29. Earth goes around the sun not in exactly 1 year, as we usually think, but in 1 year plus about 6 extra hours. Because these extra hours add up over time, after a few years they become a whole extra day. To keep our calendar correct, we add this extra day to the end of February. This day is called Leap Day. This leads to small time errors, so we consider them in a leap year. The Maya did about the same thing with the eclipse calendar. But how did they choose the reference points for their astronomical calculations? We don't know. They did it without computers, telescopes, or other modern technology. They were just very good at observing nature. By the way, a similar system of cycles made people believe that the end of the world would happen in 2012. The Maya created a calendar that began in 3144 BCE and ended on December 21, 2012. The Maya saw this as the date of ending the old cycle and starting a new one. But our modern culture has turned this point into the end of the world. In addition to calendars, the Maya built unique architectural structures. They invented one of the most advanced writing systems. They were also big fans of liquid chocolate. They grew cocoa trees, then plucked the beans, dried, ground, and mixed these crushed beans with water. They warmed it up and got a frothy and very bitter drink. To make it sweeter, they added honey to it, but they could also throw chili peppers and other spices in there. Maya did many interesting things, but this is a topic for another video.
Back in 1912, British newspapers were buzzing with one bold claim: the first humans appeared in Britain, not Africa. It felt like history itself had been rewritten, and everyone bought into it. Crowds cheered, scientists raised their glasses, and the tiny village of Piltdown in Sussex suddenly became the spotlight for what was hailed as the greatest evolutionary discovery ever. It all happened thanks to this guy, Charles Dawson, a curious amateur archaeologist who was dreaming of making a name in science. He claimed he had found bone fragments of a transitional creature between apes and humans. Dawson teamed up with Arthur Smith Woodward, a respected geologist from the Natural History Museum, and together they assembled fragments of skulls, teeth, and even primitive tools. They unveiled their find, the Piltdown Man, to the Geological Society, and for decades everyone believed it. Textbooks even rewrote human evolution around it, and entire generations memorized it as pure truth. But here's the twist. In 1949, new technology to determine the precise age of objects came along, and things just didn't add up. Tests showed that the skull was only about 50,000 years old, not hundreds of thousands. Then came an even bigger shock. The skull and jaw didn't even belong to the same species. Someone had combined a human skull with the jaw of an ape, probably an orangutan. And even worse, they filed down the teeth to make them look more human and stained the bones to match the surrounding gravel. A Frankenstein fossil and its creator managed to trick the entire world into believing they'd found a missing piece of humanity's puzzle. So Dawson went down in scientific history, but probably not the way he was hoping to. And he wasn't the only one. Some did it for money, others for fame. In the late 19th century Paris, museums were collecting ancient treasures like they were trading cards. When a stunning gold tiara, supposedly belonging to an ancient Scythian king, Ctesiphon, appeared on the market, the Louvre had to have it. It was breathtaking, detailed, majestic, fit for a ruler. The museum proudly paid a fortune and displayed it as a masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship. Then came the heartbreak. A few years later, an entrepreneurial goldsmith from Odessa read about the Louvre's glorious find and burst out laughing. He recognized the tiara because he made it with his own hands. It was a modern piece, a commission he created for local dealers, except they never told him they planned to pass it off as an ancient treasure. The Louvre was humiliated. Once again, the whole world believed in a beautiful lie, and the goldsmith who had just made the museum look ridiculous ended up famous in the world of art. The tiara still holds the Guinness World Record for the greatest goldsmith fraud of all time. Another story of a well-planned scientific hoax takes us to a quiet town of Cardiff, New York, a couple of decades before the Louvre incident. In 1869, workers digging a well struck something hard and enormous. They uncovered what looked like a petrified 10-foot-tall man lying in the earth. Crowds poured in from miles around to see it. Preachers called it proof of the biblical giants mentioned in Genesis. Scientists debated whether it was fossilized or divine. Within days, the Cardiff giant became a sensation. People paid good money to see it, 50 cents a ticket, which was a lot back then. Later, it turned out that a man named George Hull carved the mysterious giant from gypsum after an argument with a Methodist reverend. Hull just wanted to prove how easily you can fool people, especially religious believers, unlike himself. So he buried the fake giant, and it worked too well. Even after experts exposed the hoax, visitors didn't care. They kept coming because they wanted to believe. Over time, the giant changed ownership several times. You can now see it at the Fenimore Farm and Country Village Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Well, speaking of museums, you might have seen crystal skulls that glow under light, presented as sacred artifacts from Mesoamerican temples. Yes, that skull from an Indiana Jones movie with ancient Aztec powers or even extraterrestrial energy. So, museums displayed such skulls proudly until scientists at the British Museum and the Smithsonian decided to give them a closer look, and what they found shattered the myth. They found that the skulls were made with modern rotary tools and abrasives that ancient carvers didn't have. In other words, someone in the 1800s or 1900s made them using modern machinery and fooled the world. They weren't messages from deities or some advanced creatures from space, just very fancy paperweights that tricked so many people into believing in some ancient superpowers. Well, let's jump several decades closer to the present day, shall we? In the 1960s, Yale University revealed what looked like a discovery that could rewrite world history: a 15th century map showing North America labeled Vinland. It meant Vikings had mapped America long before Columbus. The headlines were sensational. The idea was romantic. Explorers crossing icy seas century before Europe even knew America existed. But something just didn't add up. The parchment was generally medieval, but the ink wasn't. Decades of testing revealed it contained titanium dioxide, a pigment invented in the 20th century. In 2021, Yale confirmed it. The Vinland map was a modern forgery, drawn over old parchment to make it look ancient. It wasn't proof of Viking genius, but rather of human cleverness on one side and the tendency to be easily persuaded on the other. And when we speak of persuasion, you don't have to try too hard when a really trustworthy source like National Geographic shares something, right? Well, in 1999, it presented what it thought was the ultimate discovery: a fossil that bridged the gap between dinosaurs and birds. It was called Archaeoraptor, and it was going to change everything we knew about evolution. The fossil came from China, and on first glance, it was perfect. A dinosaur tail, bird-like wings, and bones that seemed to tell the story of flight's evolution. But soon, paleontologists started whispering. The bones didn't quite line up. CT scans revealed the ugly truth. It was literally glued together from parts of different species. A dinosaur tail from one fossil, a bird body from another. Someone had Frankensteined the fossils to make a more valuable specimen. The embarrassment hit hard, especially for National Geographic, which had built an entire story around a fake the world liked to believe. Now, if you think scientific hoaxes are all in the past because of all the 20th century high-tech, here's a surprise for you. In 2020, the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. made a stunning confession. All 16 fragments of its prized Dead Sea Scroll collection were modern forgeries. They'd spent millions acquiring what they thought were sacred 2,000-year-old texts, only to learn they were made of ancient leather painted with modern ink. The forgery was so advanced that even experts were fooled at first. But after detailed forensic tests, it became clear the holy relics were anything but holy. It wasn't just about money, it was about faith. Thousands of visitors had stood in front of those glass cases, feeling awe, reverence, and connection, only to learn it was a show built on lies. And finally, it's time for one of the eeriest hoaxes of all. In 2000, a mummy surfaced in Pakistan, claiming to be a 26-year-old Persian princess, the daughter of Xerxes. They found her in a gilded sarcophagus, wrapped in golden robes. Her face was eerily well preserved. Archaeologists were stunned, but something about her looked wrong. CT scans, linguistic analysis, and radiocarbon dating revealed the horrifying truth. The mummy wasn't ancient at all. She was a modern woman, and someone likely took her life and then mummified her to sell as a fake relic. Well, yikes. The story went from exciting to tragic overnight and broke many hearts. What was supposed to be a royal miracle turned out to be a human crime and yet another lie. All these stories have one thing in common: hope. People want to believe. They want to touch the past, to find proof that connects them to something bigger. Whether it's scientists looking for the missing link, museums wanting fame, or believers searching for signs of faith, we all crave wonder. History is full of tricksters, and sometimes the best stories come from the fakes that fooled us all.